Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. This is Theo, your host for today's show. Now, joining us today is Fabio Ardossi. I know I will absolutely mess it up again, all the way from the other side of the pond, the ocean, sorry, from Milan, I believe. So, Fabio, welcome to the show.
Hello. Pronunciation was perfect. It was
Okay.
even better than mine.
I wouldn't go, I would not go that far. So, you and I met by chance actually last year in an event in London. And I remember back when we first started talking, you were saying you had, you're a founder of the House of AI, which we'll dive a little bit into that. You're also an innovator, you have a tech background, AI background. You are active in actually the London tech scene as well. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and what exactly is the House of AI. Almost sounds like the title of a movie.
And that's probably one of the reasons I created the name. So thank you for the intro. So I always like to work in innovation. My background, my education is tech. I studied computer science ages ago, originally from Italy. So I was in Venice at that time. Some years after moving through Milan, I'm now in London. I spent a good number of years working with large and medium enterprises, helping them to build always, kind of tech transformation or digital transformation, but always from a data and machine learning point of view. Recently, I decided to start a new venture last year, kind of same time that we met, which is called the House of AI. Now, believe me or not, the idea and beyond the name is actually giving a roof to AI, which is quite pretentious because, of course, AI has no. I mean, AI is quite wide in terms of technology and topics and categories and use. But in London, it's also true that it's quite fragmented and spread. So you don't really have a place where you go and you say, let's talk about AI. So I was thinking how I can try to connect different things together under a roof. And that was the beginning of the idea. It became a brand for me that I'm using mostly because I have one specific mission in my mind coming from mostly, I know that I shouldn't say, but it's consulting background. And when you are a consultant, of course, you have a lot of pros, a lot of cons. So I wanted to give three main things to artificial intelligence, which also AI, it's not necessarily artificial intelligence, by the way, that's also an interesting thing. But let's say artificial intelligence was missing three things, and is still, I believe, missing three things. Trust, which means that often, and that was probably the main reason in a very probably, I don't know, romantic way. Probably here my cultural background is more related to the romantic side. So giving a house to something that it's not trust. It's not 100% the fact. I mean, artificial intelligence is widely used, but it's true that there is an issue in how we understand and we believe the outcomes or how the technology is used, especially as a consumer. That's a big thing. So there are some facts in the market. So trust is a big thing. The second one is governing AI. So it's not just a new technology, but it's a new way of working. It's something that it's more like a layer. A usual comparison is true. It's like electricity. So it's something that it's all around, and it's not just one specific thing. But you have to manage and govern through, especially if you think about enterprises, very complex environment then you have to understand how to integrate and govern something that is coming in. From the past, mostly was ML, machine learning. The future is surely something close to what at the moment we are calling agentic AI, which is quite stretched, but it's true that there is a road connecting the evolution of technology. So, but we need to govern, and governing AI at the moment is quite a challenge, and it's difficult to understand how to do it. And the third one, which is the most important thing, I believe, especially if you are too much into technology, we still to remember that we are humans, and technology is not replacing humans, but it will be side by side with humans. So interacting with this new technology is an important thing. So what I would call human-centered AI, or connecting the artificial intelligence with our behaviors, interaction processes, it's a very important thing. So how we interact with AI, if you think about a visual, you can imagine like a physical robot. So even if we think that maybe an AI agent will be a robot, let's imagine this, then how you communicate and you interact is a very important thing. Now, most of the AI agent at the moment are digital through maybe the screen. It's not, I mean, there are physical robots, but you don't have really something that you interact in the day-to-day business activities. So how you can effectively interact with something on the other side, which is not human, and it's not replacing what you are doing. So these three main things are the challenge that the House of AI wants to address. And that's the beginning of the story.
That is indeed the beginning of a story, which can be very long, because you talk about trust, you talk about governance, and you talk about how do we interact and work with AI in a human-centered way. But I do have a question follow-up, and I'll come back to that, because I think what as a society we like to do is we like to put a very romantic veneer, using your word, over the technology. We think there's a lot it can do, and there are a lot of benefits to the technology, but then there are also challenges, right? How can we trust something that we can't see and we can't touch? How do we work with something if you didn't have the access to it or learn how to use it? And how do we create governance around it when the world is fairly fragmented? And we all have our own goals and have our own priorities. Countries and nations and companies, they want to get ahead of each other. So they're competing priorities. So as much as these are important concepts and important things for us to pursue, I think my two questions will be, the first one is, what exactly are companies doing? Because every day when you look at, I don't know, any, articles or reports, recently, for example, Klarna, or, last year, Klarna said, they are going to replace a lot of their workflows with AI. And then earlier this year, they came back and said, oops, actually, no, we do like humans. Or recently, Shopify said that we're not going to hire any more humans unless you can prove that this is not something that, you can't do with AI. So are companies actually actively pursuing AI in a meaningful way beyond creating cute graphics and cute action figures?
So I'm giving you what I'm, let's say, discussing with companies through people. Something is also analysts, and something is also from the news that I'm reading around. So companies, I would have one thing. Sorry, one thing is I would avoid to take the extreme, because especially when you read, but this is forever. I mean, it's not just AI. It's on every topic. We like to read extremes, like, oh, there is this company that maybe for sure is like replacing all the headcounts made by humans, pure robots. It could be the case. Now, is he right? Is he wrong? I cannot judge, because it really depends on the strategy of the company. It could become like one governing model for the specific company, but not necessarily it becomes one of the models that every company is doing. And that is the reason why I'm calling an extreme. On the other side, there are companies saying, I'm not using AI because AI is not giving value at all. And again, it's like it's your way of working that probably for which AI is not giving any value. So these extremes are interesting to read in the news, but are not representative, in my opinion, of the direction of companies using AI or not. It's the extreme of the usual shape of the norm. So you have a lot of extremes doing extreme things. What I can see is that it's an evolution. It's an evolution from a tech point of view, and it's an evolution from a process point of view. And it's an evolution of also how the company can operate in a different way. But there is a lot of gray areas, for sure. For example, one is, we talk about if AI is taking the right decisions or not. But that one can be included into companies' decisions, or maybe it's more a society aspect that maybe it's not impacting the company itself. Because if I'm using AI to improve for example, the track, so or the timing that I'm using to move items around, very operational thing. It's not impacting the society. Maybe you can be wrong, but it's not impacting any ethical aspect. So there are different degrees. So some companies are very active in trying to understand where the artificial intelligence umbrella can fit the operational aspects, how to actually use the technology. And what I was saying, the evolution of technology is just going into more automation. And this is a normal evolution. It's like someone told me, I don't remember who, but I do agree. It's like we are fundamentally lazy. People are lazy, and we are trying to reduce the time to do something. So if you have to go to the point A to the point B and you have to walk, but as an option, you can go by bike, and as another option, you can take the car, and then as another option, there is a teletransport in the future, then you will try to maximize the laziness that we have. That's normal evolution. And AI is feeling this. So the natural evolution of artificial intelligence is actually this one. So companies are at the moment struggling in doing one specific thing, in what I can see. And it's mostly the last 2 years, because we had this is my point of view, I'll maybe share with someone, but we had a very big wave of consumerization, so like AI from a consumer point of view. And a lot of people managed to access technologies from more consuming point of view, not from a business point of view, but they bring that kind of technology into the business. So we skipped what usually we don't do. So if you think about CRM as an example, so CRM is a very enterprise software. You don't use it. So if you as a company you decide to take a CRM software, you usually do an enterprise or a company level transformation. But if you have generative AI, which is it's literally reachable, so you can use generative AI from your desktop. Then at that point, for me, it's the consumer side of the generative AI. And then everything became all of a sudden generative AI. And there is a lot of confusion about AI, generative AI, everything is now a little bit of everything. But AI, we know it's completely different from generative AI because they are two completely different things. So now we are mostly talking about Gen AI. Why? Because all of a sudden we had external technology entering into the back door, the enterprises, and enterprises are not ready. And if you stop everything, say, oh no, you cannot use generative AI, then you can have potentially a problem because people are saying, why I cannot use? I mean, it's improving what I'm doing. But enterprises are stuck in because they don't know if there is a risk, and this is a big thing. So for example, the risk aspect of including consumer applications, it's a big thing. And you will probably remember in the past, it's waves and cycles. With mobile apps, we had the same thing. And now, actually, if we have a business mobile phone, we are full of apps. Some companies are checking, some others, they just say, okay, you install and you use the apps that you want to use. And it's more or less the same. So with generative AI, we had this. If you do nothing, you have too much freedom, and people are using without really thinking about what they are doing. So and we know in the news, they share private documents, sensitive information. They create something without saying to the company, opening up to a risk which is legal. For example, if you create a document that you don't know that you are infringing, for example, the copywriting, and then you release a document and it's labeled by your company, and your company didn't know that you used ChatGPT because it was easier, then it's a risk and it's a problem. So you have this combination of things, and companies are struggling to create something which is not blocking everything, but not also like giving complete freedom to the people. That's where they are struggling the most. It's not a tech problem, and that's the most important thing. So if you look from a practical point of view, the priority from most of the company is what we call data literacy or AI literacy, something about providing to all people in a company understanding of opportunities but risks of a technology. Because especially people like me that we know tech, we think that for everyone is clear the risks, but it's not true. If you speak with someone with, for example, I'm using a random example, so no picking just one random marketing. If you have a marketing background, you probably don't really know what could be the risk or putting a document into generative AI because you don't know the engine behind. And that's very simple. You do one day workshop. I'm oversimplifying, but you do one way workshop, you educate the people, and then people start to say, oh, okay, so probably this is a risk. So let me try to understand how to optimize. So that's the focus of the company. Because so far, they just play with the technology. And it's true, the companies are not scaling into the next step because they tried a lot of technology available in the market, mostly as a B2C apps, so without naming anyone, but all the LLM engines available in the market, it's of course B2C. So it's meant to be used by a lot of users. And that is the focus. So educating in the use and creating what I would call the glue for this technology at the enterprise level to scale up outside what you would call probably playground space, where everyone is happy to try small things, but you really don't scale in terms of operational model.
Sandbox. I think that's what
Yeah.
we call it. Yeah, you described what we call the shadow IT problem, right? And shadow IT now is shadow AI, and it's very true. A lot of the financial institutions I've talked to, either they took the route of we're just going to block everything, which really is not the best way to go because it doesn't matter what you do, the world is changing around you. Your employees are probably using it, your executives are using it at home. So a more practical way, and to your point, is to get people to understand what exactly technology can do. How do you create safeguards around it to keep your organization safe? Now, with that being said, though, I do want to ask you, because this came out from a McKinsey report recently, and it said while some people are indeed using generative AI in their organization, not everyone is actually checking the output coming from Gen AI. As a matter of fact, the reports say that only 27% of respondents say that they do review the content coming out from Gen AI, which means that 73% of people just let it go. Two questions. Is that a smart thing to do? And I think I already know the answer. And then second, what should they do? What would you advise them to do?
So I think the technology is not mature enough at the moment to avoid what it's called human in the loop, which is exactly checking the outcome of something without entering in technicality. But we all know probably it's a kind of common word, at least from technologists. What they are usually calling hallucinations is basically something they have to check. Probably hallucination is too much to be fair, because it's like the word itself, it's saying that there is, if you go deeper into technical level, you understand what does it mean, hallucinations, which is mostly like overfitting information in a way that then it doesn't make sense what it's coming out. In fact, most of the time that you are using LLMs, these kind of so-called hallucinations are coming after asking questions after questions after questions in a try to review and refine the ultimate outcome. So this is an example of learning how to use this technology. This technology is meant to give in maybe 1-2 rounds on average, and then you have to check, and then you have to review, and then maybe coming back in a different way. For example, asking very simple tips are opening a new session, or maybe uploading some new material. So there are some practical tips to avoid this. But often, because we don't know and we think that it's kind of oracle in front of us, then we continue to ask question over question over questions, and that's exactly where you have all the so-called hallucinations. There are big examples of people saying, oh, we did create a new religion, or we did create a new language. But the reality is that just going as much as possible through this route, which by definition is creating something that you can give meaning on top, or as a completely random things. So
it's a word salad.
yeah. And so the response is human in the loop. And that's one thing that you have to keep into account when you think how to use these technologies at the moment. Which of course depends on what you are doing. So there are probably, I would say, two main big macro categories that you can use with generative AI. One is, by definition, it comes from the word generative. So you can generate something new coming from, and here we can talk probably 1 hour only on the way to generate something new, also because it's text or images, videos, or music, for example. So there are different areas where you can generate something new. So that area is probably the one that you want to use to improve a starting point. So you want to create something, and it's the problem of the blank page. So let's use the example of the text. You have no idea where to start. You put few names, few words, and then you have a starting point. But it has to be a starting point. It has not to be the end point. That's the important thing. The other one is summarization, which is mostly like search. It's advanced searching. In the past, it was mostly search engines, and they were giving you mostly links to then going and exploring text and information. Summarization is the next step. Instead of reviewing what is coming, you review the summary of what is coming. And that is actually, again, it's a boost for you to research, but it's not like a replacement of, for example, creating, because that's the gray area. So it's actually a summarization. It's not generation of a new text. So that is something for you to understand. Again, maybe a starting point for a new search. Those are the two main things that generative AI is meant to. And then you have all the opportunities to use inside the enterprise. And the technical way to improve this, it's clear. I mean, that's the reason why I'm saying if you use the consumer side versus some, for example, enterprise ready solutions, you have few main elements. For example, one, it's called guardrails. And guardrails comes from basically giving some direction and constraints to the engine, either through specific prompting or, even better, to specific document aside that is reducing the noise of the original models, the models then they are using to create the foundational models of LLMs. So that is the technical way to do it. And on top of the technical way, there is, like, as I said, the understanding that from a process point of view, you need a human in the loop, which is exactly the starting point of this question. Is like, it cannot be the case that it's the 23% or 27, I don't remember if it was 23 or 27, but very low percentage of people who is checking. It should be in the process. So it shouldn't be like, oh, I didn't have time. No. It's the process that it's constraining you. It's giving you a step to check it. Either, sometimes it's just scrolling the document, some very basic, trivial element of checking a document is scrolling until the end. And then if you scroll it in the end, then you can submit. Something like this. So it has to be embedded in the process. But again, there is consumer applications versus enterprise applications.
And again, I think a lot of this goes back to what you said earlier. It's not a technology problem. It's a process problem. It's a people problem. So in terms of where you sit in the UK, in Europe, what does the next 9 to 12 months look like from a development perspective, from a funding perspective? Because there's no lack of hype, regardless of which side of the continent you're on. But there seems to be a push, especially within Europe, to try to get up to speed, to try to move faster, to innovate more, to invest more. What do you think the rest of the year is going to look like?
So, well, if you look from an innovation point of view, so what is starting right now, that we will see some results in the next year or so, it's for sure around understanding how to integrate the models, let's call generative AI at the moment, even if it's a little bit too much simple, there are some other elements, into more automation. And the gap between the generative AI and the automation, it's made by, at the moment, what we called agentic AI, which is slightly different from, I know it's silly, but it's not AI agents. It's slightly different because agentic AI, it is meant to be a wider way to say it's interaction between multimodal entities, which most of the time are, of course, made by agents or chatbots. But there are way more things that you are interacting with. There are, of course, data sources. There are, of course, systems. There are interfaces. There are automatic APIs. So the next step is try to understand how to make, or called multimodal agents, how to make them interacting in an effective way. That's for sure what is happening on the innovation edge. What is more practical? So what we are trying to understand in terms of companies, because this is more like, okay, investors are looking into the next wave. So where I should invest for the next wave of innovation. And this is one thing. But there is one element that it's not missing. It's just keeping a little bit under the radar. And most of the time we call this reasoning. So the missing point is how we make the full solution a solution that can actually think what it's doing. Now, I don't want to move into philosophical side of they are like humans, they can replace us. There is the Turing test. Now they actually probably manage to pass the Turing test. So there are a lot of things. It's not this one. It's a very simple thing. It's connecting the reasons why something is happening, which is cause effect or causal inference. This is a technical thing, which is the connection between the current state of the art of machine learning or artificial intelligence to the next one. Why? Because it's giving us all the understanding, because as a human, we always ask why. And computers or systems, they are not asking why. And I'm not saying the causal inference or causal AI or causal ML it will give the why ability to machines, but it will be for us important to connect why something is happening. Now, it can be used to answer the why to some decisions taken by machines, or it can be which is connected to explainable AI. So it's literally beyond the decisions of systems that you want to explain, because you have from a regulation point of view, because you have from a trust point of view, so explaining what's happening to your users, customers internally, or just because you want to understand exactly which data has been used or which simulation has been used. And of course, it's the business simulation. So that's the link between the current use of AI to the next one. Because what we want to actually do is move into the simulation side to be able to do as much as possible the next level of forecasting. So it's not just forecasting something, but it's taking a decision and potentially linking a decision to an automated decision, which is, we are not close to that one at the moment. So those elements are also part of what the companies are trying to do. So you have a more layer one, so more technological layer, which will be behind the scenes of applications, which is mostly creating reasoning, because you don't want to create the next LLM. Literally, you want to actually use something like this. So you create this layer, and then from an application point of view, is you want to create something which will reduce the time, or for like doing processes from a business point of view, which is fitting your business workflows into the technology. That's the big thing that the companies are looking. And companies, yes, but also investors and also founders. So you are trying to take a business problem and streamline into the technology without creating the technology to respond to a problem that not necessarily companies have, which is the big change.
I'm actually glad you said that, instead of saying that, the future is all agentic AI, and you and I are going to be sitting here where my bot's talking to your bot, which does not sound like fun at all. But I do appreciate you bringing the practical aspect of it from what we can use in the business world. And that's the next big thing we need to watch out for. Before we go, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So I'm quite active on LinkedIn through professional posts, but also playing with generative AI and making me action figure. And they can connect on LinkedIn, of course, with Fabio Ardossi. There is a website for the House of AI where they can connect. I'm active in London if people are in London, and of course you can find me online through mostly the social networks on the professional side and on Instagram.
or randomly in a social breakfast. All right,
Or
until then,
yes.
thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Fabio. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. I hope you did get some valuable and interesting insights out from our wonderful guest, who is also a mad computer scientist. Inside joke. Until then, we'll talk to you next week.